Above the main peak of Clearwind Sect, the lights blazed like daylight. Floating clouds were dyed in 7 colors by the radiance of the mountain guarding array. Immortal cranes cried clear in the high mist, their calls braided with the loud toasts inside the grand hall. The scene looked like a prosperous age painted across the sky. The air carried the rich sweetness of 100-flower brew. Clearwind Sect had brought out this treasured reserve to celebrate the end of the Sect tournament. Every mouthful held dense spiritual energy. It was worth a fortune. At the center of the hall, a young man sat where all eyes gathered. He wore a robe of snow-white brocade. His hair was gold, and his eyes were blue. His features looked carved from stone. He stood apart from the Eastern cultivators around him, yet his otherworldly presence made him feel perfectly in place. He was Charlie. He was an American who had crossed into this fantasy world years ago. Now, his name was the brightest in all of Qingzhou, within the Eastern mysterious domain. After joining the sect, he reached foundation establishment. In 3 years, in 5 years, he reached core formation. Now he was still not yet 20, and his cultivation was half-step golden core. That terrifying speed let him sit firmly as the chief personal disciple of Clearwind Sect. People outside even praised him as the top prodigy of Qingzhou. Elders around him raised cups and offered toasts that bordered on flattery. A confident curve rested at the corner of his mouth. Every lift of his hand carried the ease of a powerhouse. He felt a quiet surge of satisfaction in his chest. 8 years after crossing over, with talent and fortune on his side, he had finally stepped into the full glare of this world. When the hall was deep in drink and heat of laughter, Sect Master Li Xuanji rose from the high seat. The noisy hall fell silent. In an instant, every gaze gathered on the imposing middle-aged man. Li Xuanji swept his eyes across the crowd. In the end, his gaze landed on Charlie. A kindly smile piled onto his face. As if he were looking at family, he announced in a clear, loud voice that Charlie had swept the sect tournament. So the sect granted him the right to train in the Spirit Spring secret realm. Then, an even heavier announcement followed. Li Xuanji declared before everyone that he would betroth his only daughter Li Qingyao to Charlie. When Charlie returned from the Spirit Spring secret realm, they would choose an auspicious day to marry. At that time, the sect would establish his status as young sect master. The hall erupted at once. Congratulations rolled in like a tide. Countless envious eyes locked onto the foreign genius. The heart of Charlie hammered so hard it almost hurt. This was the peak moment he had dreamed of. He turned to look at the slender figure beside him. Li Qingyao attended in full ceremonial dress today. She was so beautiful. She did not seem like something of this world. Yet beneath that flawless face, a trace of pallor hid in plain sight. Facing the burning gaze of Charlie, she forced her lips to move. A stiff smile appeared as if it were carved into place. Inside her sleeve, her jade-like hand gripped the edge of her robe. Her neck, clawless, turned white from the pressure. Drowned in joy, Charlie took it as a young girl's shyness and reserve. He did not notice the flash of cold light that passed deep in the eyes of Li Xuanji. On the high platform, at this moment, Charlie believed he was the chosen one of heaven and earth. The road to the heights lay right under his feet. He did not know that what waited ahead was an abyss without end. Dawn cracked open above the ancient road outside the mountain gate of Clearwind Sect. A thin layer of corpse-pale fog covered the ground. Dew clung to the tips of withered yellow grass. Each drop trembled like a frozen tear. Hooves shattered the dead quiet of morning. A lavish spiritwood carriage raced along the winding mountain path. Its wheels ground over broken stones with a dull, steady thud. As the carriage rolled farther from the sect, the air grew thin of spirit energy. In its place came the harsh chill of open wildlands. Even the roadside trees looked twisted and savage. Charlie rode slightly ahead beside the carriage. Golden hair streamed behind him. In the wind, blue eyes shone with youthful fire. He kept glancing back at the faint silhouette inside the window. A gentle smile stayed on his mouth. For this escort of his betrothed Li Qingyao to the Spirit Spring secret realm To seek fortune, he had borrowed a wind chaser beast. From the sect, he wanted the ride to be as smooth as possible for her. When they stopped by a creek to rest, Charlie hurried over with a water skin. He asked softly if Li Qingyao felt tired. Li Qingyao did not lift the curtain through thick brocade. She answered that she was fine. Her voice carried a cold, tight edge that was hard to read. Charlie did not think much of it. He assumed she was reluctant to leave home, or that she held the reserved pride of a noble young lady. His need to protect her only grew stronger. Near midday, the road split ahead. One broad route led straight toward the safe official road. The other was a narrow track choked with weeds. It coiled toward deep mountains, wrapped in mist all year. Charlie started to steer for the official road. Then Li Qingyao spoke sharply. From the carriage, she insisted. They take the small path, she said. It would save half a day and reach the Spirit Spring secret realm sooner. Charlie pulled on the reins and frowned. That small path pointed toward Blackwind Ridge, a place infamous for desperate rogue cultivators. Then he weighed his own cultivation with half-step golden core in the Qingzhou region. Where could he not go? And this was his betrothed. Asking how could he refuse, Charlie answered out loud and turned his mount into the grim track. He did not notice what happened inside the carriage. At that same moment, Li Qingyao gripped the cushion until her knuckles went white. Her eyes filled with despair and struggle. They pushed deeper into the forest. Ancient trees rose thicker and higher until they blotted out the sky. Sunlight was chopped into scattered shards by layered branches. The air turned sharply colder. Sometime along the way, the crisp bird calls vanished. A deathly silence took their place. Only the wind moved through dead limbs with a long wet whine like countless wronged souls, whispering in the dark as if this detour had no way back. Cold light flashed like a venomous snake tongue. Without warning, it shot from deep inside the dense woods. It went straight for the throat of the carriage. Charlie's eyes flew open wide. The sword in his hand came free in an instant. He roared and the shock shook loose, a storm of fallen leaves. Using only his half-step strength, he forced the ambush aside. The blast of air rolled outward. The lavish spiritwood carriage, wood splinters, sprayed everywhere. The wind chaser beast screamed in agony. Then it died at once. Before the dust could settle, 3 ghostly figures in black robes rushed in. They formed a triangle. As they closed, their aura was cold and vicious. Every strike was ruthless. Their teamwork was so smooth, it felt rehearsed 1,000 times. Charlie blocked and countered without pause. Steel rang against steel in the dim forest. He caught a glimpse of their handwork. Between clashes, the opening stance looked 7 parts like falling cloud palm, but their spiritual power ran in reverse. A strange demonic chill threaded through it. He had no time to think deeper. A curved saber from the right carried a bloody stench toward his neck to shield Li Qingyao behind him. Charlie could not dodge away. He chose to take it head on. In less than 10 breaths, wounds opened across his body. Blood soaked the robe that carried the honor of a personal disciple. The pressure of death tightened like a noose. A hard resolve flashed through Charlie's eyes. He bit through his own tongue. A mouthful of essence blood sprayed across the blade. The sword body turned red like fresh blood. It hummed with a furious cry. A wild power detonated from inside his body. Get back, Charlie howled. As he swung in a sweeping strike, he burned his own life potential. Without hesitation, the violent sword energy drove 3 same realm killers back several jung. A gap tore open in their formation. He did not look back as he shouted behind him, Qingyao, run. Do not worry about me. Go back to the sect and bring help. Li Qingyao stumbled out from the wreckage of the carriage. She ran along the blood-stained path toward the edge of the woods. Seeing her escape, a heavy stone finally lifted from Charlie's heart. He started to turn back to fight to the death. Then a brutal impact slammed into his back. A withered bony palm pressed there. Without a sound, in the next breath, an icy inner force crashed into his body. It charged straight for his TC with savage violence. Pain drowned his thoughts in an instant. It was like hearing porcelain crack. That was the sound of his dantian shattering. Charlie flew like a kite. With its string cut, he smashed into muddy ground covered in rotting leaves. Blood burst from his mouth. Spiritual energy poured out of him like a broken floodgate. His vision blurred fast in the final moment before darkness took him. He forced his head up. He looked toward Li Qingyao. Her face held no fear. Her face held no grief, only a dead calm that chilled the bone. It was like she was staring at a corpse already decided. Darkness rushed in. It swallowed the last speck of light in his eyes. Agony tore through his gut like a rusted saw ripping back and forth. A shriek lodged in his throat and broke into hoarse breathing. Charlie snapped his eyes open. His body moved on instinct as he tried to call up spiritual power from his dantian to crush the pain. Terror flooded him when he found nothing inside. The sea of qi that used to surge like a river was gone. In its place was a dead ruin filled with silence. Only shattered pain crawled through every bone and vein. He was in his quarters at Clearwind Sect. The carved wooden bed that should have felt familiar now radiated bone deep cold. The room was too quiet. Not a single junior brother or junior sister was anywhere in sight. The same people who used to fight to flatter him had all vanished. He forced himself upright. Cold sweat had already soaked his undershirt. His cracked lips trembled as he called out for Li Qingyao. He called her name again and again, asking where she was. The door creaked open. No one rushed in with tear-soaked cheeks. No one threw themselves into his arms. Only one figure stepped inside, tall and imposing and full of authority. It was his master. It was Sect Master Li Xuanji of Clearwind Sect. Hope ignited in the eyes of Charlie. Like a drowning man grabbing the last stalk of grass, he ignored the agony and stumbled as he tried to get off the bed to salute. He called him Master. He said he had been ambushed by demonic path cultivators. He said he fought to the death to protect Li Qingyao. He said his dantian was damaged and begged for the 9-turn meridian renewal pill from the sect treasury. He swore that with that pill he could rebuild his foundation. Li Xuanji walked to the bedside. His face did not change. He looked at the foreign disciple who once made him proud. There was no pity in his gaze, only a chilling cold that made the heart seize. He placed 2 fingers on the pulse of Charlie, the same hand that had stroked his disciple's head with kindness so many times now felt like 10,000-year ice after only 3 breaths. Li Xuanji withdrew his hand. He even pulled out a handkerchief with open disgust and wiped his fingertips. No need. The voice of Li Xuanji stayed flat, like he was talking about a cracked piece of porcelain that was no longer worth anything. He said the dantian of Charlie was completely shattered. He said the meridians were broken inch by inch. Even immortals could not save it from this moment on. He said Charlie was a useless man who could never cultivate again. The 9-turn meridian renewal pill was far too precious. It could not be wasted on a mortal. The word struck Charlie like thunder from a clear sky. His soul nearly blew apart. He could not believe what he was hearing. He reached out desperately to grab the sleeve of Li Xuanji. Fear twisted his voice out of shape. He said it was impossible. He said his master once told him he was the chosen one. He said he was the future of Clearwind Sect. He demanded to see Li Qingyao. He said he became like this to save her. He said she would not abandon him. Li Xuanji told him to shut his mouth. He snapped his sleeve. A burst of force slammed Charlie back onto the bed. The impact made blood spill from his mouth. Li Xuanji looked down at him from above. All warmth was gone from his eyes. Only cold calculation remained. He said Li Qingyao was already in seclusion. He said she had grasped an opportunity and was breaking through toward Golden Core. He said a useless man like Charlie had no right to disturb her. He said the sect did not feed idle people. He said for the sake of past effort, he would allow Charlie to live as a menial disciple in the outer sect. He told him to take care of himself. Then Li Xuanji turned and left his decisive back, carried away the last trace of heat in the room. The door slammed shut. Charlie collapsed on the bed like his bones had been pulled out outside the window. An occasional bird call drifted, and he felt the world crumble in that single moment. He finally understood that mountains of grace and seas of devotion could turn cheap and ridiculous. The instant cultivation was lost 3 days later. 2 discipline hall disciples dragged Charlie into the grand hall like they were hauling a dead dog. His face was paper white. His clothes were in disarray. His legs could not hold him up. He crashed down and dropped to his knees on the cold, hard bluestone floor. The hall was packed with his former brothers and sisters, the same people who once trailed behind him with smiles, now wore sneers and gloating eyes. On the high platform, Sect Master Li Xuanji sat upright. In the main seat, his gaze was a blade that stabbed straight into the young man below. Li Xuanji voice rolled through the hall with chilling authority. He accused Charlie of chasing merit and charging ahead recklessly during the escort mission. He said Charlie ruined his own foundation. He said Charlie nearly pushed his beloved daughter into desperate danger. He said a heart like that could never carry a great duty. Charlie jerked his head up. His eyes were webbed with red disbelief twisted across his face. He had burned his own essence blood to buy Li Qingyao a path to live yet in his master's mouth. It had become greed and rashness. Charlie opened his cracked lips to defend himself. Then, a graceful figure stepped out from the side of the hall. It was Li Qingyao. She wore a flowing cloud brocade robe. Her expression was cold and proud. Spiritual power pulsed around her as if she stood on the edge of golden core. She looked like a cloud above the 9 heavens. Charlie on the floor looked like mud in the gutter. Li Qingyao did not even give Charlie a real glance. She flicked her hand and tossed a warm jade pendant to the ground. A clear, sharp sound rang out as it shattered. This betrothal token is returned to you today. Her voice held no warmth at all, like she was disposing of trash with dust. On it now, I am the future hope of Clearwind Sect, and you are nothing but a cripple with a shattered dantian. Immortal and mortal are not the same. Our fate is finished. Do not keep dreaming. Like a toad reaching for a swan. Laughter exploded across the hall. Harsh words poured in like a flood and drowned him. Some mocked the foreign barbarian for daring to dream too high. Some celebrated that the senior sister had finally cut loose a burden. Charlie stared at the broken jade on the floor. His fingernails dug deep into his palm. Blood seeped out, and he did not even feel it. In that moment, he understood there was no chosen one of heaven. There was no deep affection and loyalty in front of profit and power. He was only an outsider who had lost his value, a stepping stone used once and thrown away on their road to the sky. Li Xuanji lifted his hand and ended it without mercy. He ordered Charlie's status as a personal disciple to be stripped at once. He ordered the betrothal torn apart. He said that, for the sake of old ties, Charlie would be spared. He decreed that Charlie would be reduced to a menial disciple. He decreed that Charlie would be expelled from the sect effective immediately. 2 discipline hall disciples kept their faces blank as they tore the flowing cloud brocade robe off Charlie. That robe marked him as the chief personal disciple. The sound of silk ripping screamed through the side hall. Right after that, a set of ragged ... The 2 men each grabbed one of his arms. They dragged him toward the mountain gate like they were hauling a dead dog. The hand that once held a sword steady now hung useless at his side. The rough ground scraped his ankles raw. Even the heavens seemed to laugh at the fallen genius. By evening, a sudden storm crashed down over the Qingzhou region. Thunder rolled without end. Violet lightning ripped the sky open. It lit up the grand mountain gate of Clearwind Sect until it looked like a ghost realm. Fat raindrops ... Before he could cultivate, the rain would have felt like a cool breeze on his face. Now his dantian was shattered and his meridians were broken. Inch by inch, the icy rain stole the last warmth from his body. His whole frame shook so hard he could not control it. The sound of his teeth chattering was swallowed by the thunder at the edge of the gate. The 2 disciples stopped, They exchanged a look. Ease flashed in their eyes from finishing the job. Disgust flashed right after one of them lifted a foot and kicked Charlie hard in the small of his back. Mud water splashed up in a dirty sheet. In an instant, he was coated like a mud ape. The pain made Charlie curl tight like a cooked shrimp. A hoarse roar clawed out of his throat. He could not even find the strength to roll over. Get lost and do not die at the sectate and bring bad luck. Do not dirty the eyes of the sect master. True person. That last jab came through the crack of the door. Then came the crisp sound of a lock. The vermilion gates groaned as they slowly closed. They cut him off from the lofty cultivation world. For good. A clang rang out. A broken sword, with only half a blade, and a worn travel sack were tossed over the wall. They landed by his hand. That was everything he owned now. Charlie lay face down in freezing mud water. He forced his head up. Inch by inch rain blurred his sight and stabbed his eyes. This was the cultivation world. This was the world where he once believed he was the chosen main character. There was no 30 years in the East, 30 years in the West. There was only harsh reality and the weakness of a man near death. He tried to use that ... Everything about him had become the most absurd joke. On this night of thunder and rain, no one would care if a cripple lived or died. The once famous #1 genius of Clearwind Sect in Qingzhou was now worse than a roadside stray dog. The rain poured like a waterfall on the muddy mountain road. A lone figure crawled forward inch by inch. Charlie felt his blood burning inside his body. The fever blurred his vision. Every breath felt like swallowing shattered glass. Somehow, he reached the threshold of the mountain god shrine. He tumbled over it and rolled into a heap on a dusty pile of dry straw. His whole body was close to collapse. He curled up in the shadow behind the idol. He tried to wrap that soaked hemp robe tighter. With shaking hands, his mind drifted on the edge of blackout. At that moment, the shrine door was kicked open with brute force. Cold wind, mixed with rain, rushed in. Two men barged inside. While cursing under their breath, a bolt of lightning tore the night sky apart. In that flash, Charlie's pupils shrank hard. His heart almost stopped. The thin man in the gray robe was someone he would know, even as ashes. He was the demonic path expert who shattered his dantian with one palm at Blackwind Ridge. What rotten luck! In this damned weather, the gray-robed man shook rain off his body. He casually raised a campfire. The other man had a face full of meat and brute muscle. He pulled out a heavy sack of spirit stones. He weighed it in his hand and grinned. Stop complaining. This is hush money from Clearwind Sect. Li Xuanji, sure, is generous. Hearing his master's name made Charlie's foggy mind snap awake. A cold chill shot from his feet to the top of his head. The gray-robed man snorted and took the spirit stones. That old thing is ruthless enough to seize that boy's innate spirit resonance and break his own bottleneck. He actually set up a scheme, this big too bad for that one, called Charlie. He died believing he got tripled to save his fiancée. He really was a useful guard dog. The brute man tossed another stick into the fire. His face was full of mockery. That eldest miss of the Li clan is no simple flower. Either she played pure and untouched. Every day she had that fool spinning in circles. When it mattered, she led him straight into a dead end. She did not even blink. That is killing the body and crushing the heart at the same time now. That boy is a cripple, kicked out of the mountain gate. He was probably fed to wild dogs already. Behind the idol, Charlie clamped a hand over his own mouth. His nails dug deep into rotten flesh. In his palm, blood seeped through his fingers and dripped to the straw. So there was no demonic path ambush. There was no tragic beauty in danger. All of it was a killing trap planned by his own master. He was not the child of fate. He was a used-up medicine dreg thrown away after his value was squeezed dry. The warm guidance of the past and the sweet betrothal all turned into the most vicious curse. Grief, rage, and humiliation slammed into his chest until it felt ready to burst. The corners of his eyes split open. What flowed out was not tears. It was dark red blood. Hatred rose like wildfire and swallowed the fever. Haze it pressed down the dizziness and the dying weakness. By force he could not die. He could not die. Here he had to live. Even if he had to crawl, he would crawl back into that fake immortal world. He would collect this blood debt with interest, and then some. A sharp ring of metal shook the ear-red sparks, burst like fireworks in the dim shop. Charlie clenched his teeth and let scalding sweat run into his eyes. The iron hammer in his hands weighed 40 jin, and it did not tremble. This was Fallen Leaf Town, a back corner of the mortal realm. It sat 3,000 li from the lofty Clearwind Sect. It was the kind of desolate place cultivators did not bother to notice 3 months ago. The young man who survived that rainy night at the mountain god shrine dragged a ruined leg here. He wandered like a stray dog until he reached this town to stay alive and to dodge any hunters that might still exist. He hid his name and became an apprentice in Old Liu blacksmith shop. For nothing but food, the American transmigrator, who once believed he was chosen by fate, in his place stood a quiet cripple with a darkened face. The furnace fire did more than stain his skin. It hid the soft, clean look that marked a cultivator. It also burned the restlessness and arrogance out of his eyes whenever the shattered bone in his right leg screamed with pain. His mind filled with the false kind face of Li Xuanji. His mind filled with the cold back of the woman who betrayed him. He did not search the mortal world for some herb to heal that leg. He welcomed the pain instead. Only pain kept him awake. Only pain kept the truth nailed into his skull. The dull rhythm of hammering became his new way of cultivating. He had lost his dantian, so he honed his body. He had lost sect shelter, so he tempered his heart. Every time he swung the hammer, he poured his hatred into it. The iron on the anvil was not iron to him. It was the skull of an enemy. Day after day, his once hollow strength turned solid muscle, packed down until it felt like granite under skin. The naive softness of a modern man shattered for good. What settled in its place was something deep and quiet. It was restraint, like a deep pit. It was cruelty that did not need to shout. Old Liu held his pipe and watched him with narrowed eyes. He had never seen anyone hammer iron like they were fighting for their life. That pair of eyes staring into the fire carried a cold light. Even an old drifter could not read. Charlie tossed the quenched hoe aside. A hard chill flashed along the edge. It looked sharper than a killer's blade. Charlie knew he was still weak, but he had patience in this blacksmith shop. Filled with coal dust and sweat, he was forging himself from a thrown-away scrap of iron. He was turning it into a blade that could pierce the sky. Deep into the night, the backyard of the blacksmith shop held only the bleak cries of cold crows. By the small oil lamp, Charlie pulled several wrinkled pieces of parchment from the hidden layer of his inner clothes. They were diagrams he had copied using his astonishing memory. He stared at the chi circulation chart and did not blink. As a modern man, he had never worshipped a lineage art with blind faith like the locals. He picked up a piece of charcoal. He drew a model of spiritual power flow on the rough ground like a circuit layout. As the line spread, his face grew darker in the dim light. Normal cultivation sought a full cycle that returned again and again without end. But the core art Li Xuanji treasured and passed to him did not follow that principle. After the meridians refined the power, it did not strengthen the body. It did not expand the sea of consciousness. It was compressed with almost sick obsession inside the Dantian Qi Sea. This was not cultivating. This was building a high-purity energy container. It was a battery with no output, and the charcoal in Charlie's hand snapped in two. A word that made his scalp go cold rose in his mind. Human cauldron. So these 3 years of Li Xuanji teaching him everything with no holding back. So these 3 years of warmth and care. So even the choice to marry his own daughter to Charlie, none of it was because he valued Charlie's talent. He was only fattening a pig for slaughter. That so-called return yuan to one did not return to the heavenly way. It returned to Li Xuanji, own Neixuanji, own nascent soul path. The whole logic locked shut in a single click. Li Xuanji had been trapped at Golden Core Peak for more than 100 years. His lifespan was running out. He needed outside force to smash the bottleneck. Someone like Charlie with innate spirit resonance, who practiced a special refining art, could be turned into the perfect cauldron. When the container was full, Li Xuanji would harvest it and swallow it whole. Then he would step into nascent soul in one leap. That was why Li Qingyao led him onto that dead road at Blackwind Ridge. That was why the killers struck with precision, but the demonic path expert hit too hard and destroyed the Dantian container. The cauldron was ruined and could not be devoured. Li Xuanji saw the medicine dregs were already useless, so he staged a play of expelling a disciple to protect his reputation. In that moment, the last illusion Charlie held about sect and master shattered into dust. He looked at the spiritual power diagram on the ground that now resembled a giant mouth ready to eat people. A cruel curve rose at the corner of his mouth. If Li Xuanji needed a cauldron to break through and the plan had failed, then that old thief was either suffering backlash or burning with desperate impatience. In this game, the balance of attack and defense had already changed. The forge fire in the backyard was pressed down to its lowest breath. Dark red coals painted Charlie's face with a dull glow. No emotion showed on him at all. In his fist, he held a snake-tongue herb he had just dug from the shaded side of a mass grave. The roots were purple-black, the leaves stretched like a snake's tongue. The smell was a sickly sweet stench that turned the stomach. This was the life-saving medicine he had prepared for his former master Li Xuanji. From idle talk among passing caravans, Charlie learned the truth. After the human cauldron plan failed, Li Xuanji had posted a massive reward. He was offering 10,000 gold to buy the legendary dragon saliva fruit. He meant to force a breakthrough by sheer gamble for a man near the end of his lifespan and half lost to deviation. It was the only straw left to grab for Charlie. It was the perfect opening for a clean counterkill. Charlie threw the snake-tongue herb into a specially made stone mortar. He began a forgery that was precise and lethal. He did not use a cultivator pill. Furnace, he hauled out the mixing vessels, the blacksmith shop used for quenching fluids. Modern chemistry snapped into place. Inside his mind, the juice of snake-tongue herb was poisonous. But at the right heat, it would react with sulfur and cinnabar. The mixture would bloom into a violent color shift. He controlled the ratios. With extreme care, he sprinkled the ground mineral powder into the ink-green toxin, a little at a time. As the crucible warmed slowly over the coals, the stench-filled liquid began to boil hard. Its color rolled from black to purple. At last, it settled into a gold-red hue that looked both holy and uncanny. It matched the color written in ancient records of dragon saliva fruit down to the slightest shade. It looked even more tempting than the real thing, but that still was not enough. A true dragon saliva fruit carried natural dragon patterns on its skin. It also held savage spiritual energy. Charlie used the precision casting skills he had learned before he crossed worlds. He blended beeswax and resin into a flesh-like base. Then, he painted layer after layer with the refined toxic paste. He took out an extremely fine tungsten wire. He heated it until it glowed. He raced it across the half-set skin. The heat etched cloud and thunder patterns that looked born from nature. As for the spiritual energy ripple, snake-tongue herb already carried a nerve toxin. When it touched the mouth and throat, it would trigger violent stabbing pain and numbness. A cultivator desperate to succeed would easily mistake that reaction for domineering medicinal power. Rashing through their body. After 3 hours, a dazzling fruit lay quietly on a rough wooden table. It looked like a top-grade dragon saliva fruit. It released a sweet scent that made the mind drift. It was the smell of death, made perfect by poison and spices. Charlie picked up the masterpiece. His thumb brushed across the forged dragon patterns. His eyes were calm in a way that made the heart shiver. This was not only a forgery, this was a precise strike aimed at the greedy nature of the cultivation world. Li Xuanji had treated him like a mindless battery of flesh and blood. So Charlie returned a bullet wrapped in sugar. When that old thief swallowed this fruit in wild joy, the poison would tear through his heart At the same time, the backlash of forced breakthrough hit. That would be the moment Clearwind Sect changed hands. The night in Qingzhou City always reeked of damp mold. Thick fog hung like an ashen burial. Shrouded smothered the greed and sin of the ghost market. Deep in the alleys, there was no clean brightness. Like a sect hall, there were only haggling voices. There were only bargains made with knives, hidden behind smiles. A cold wind slipped through the narrow lanes. It lifted dead leaves and spun them along the ground. It sounded like countless wronged souls, moaning softly, as if the world itself was setting the stage for what was about to happen. Charlie never showed his face in a place like this. He understood the weakness in people. If something came too easily, it would invite suspicion. Only a treasure that carried the stink of danger felt believable. Only a prize wrapped in blood and coincidence could ignite true hunger. So he let the forged dragon saliva fruit pass through filthy hands. He let it pick up rumors like dust. He let it arrive as if fate had tossed it into the world by accident. And when it finally surfaced, it was no longer a thing made by a man. It looked like a miracle that the heavens had misplaced. Greed in Li Xuanji rose so hard, it almost became visible. When he touched it, pain stabbed at his fingertips. Again and again, he treated that pain as the tyrannical pressure of a divine treasure he never imagined. It was the poison of snake tongue, herb eating into his flesh. The fish bit faster than Charlie expected. Goldtooth Wang did not dare linger in the ghost market. That same night, he fled with the treasure to Clearwind Sect to claim credit. In less than 2 days, the whole Qingzhou region was buzzing with the news. Li Xuanji was wild with joy. He even emptied spirit stones that the sect had saved for 100 years. He paid a sky-high price to buy this so-called opportunity. Then he announced it before everyone. After the sect grand ceremony, he would enter seclusion at once. He would swallow the sacred fruit and charge toward the nascent soul realm. Clearwind Sect lit lanterns until the mountains glowed. Drums thundered through the night. Every disciple drowned in a fever dream of rising power. They acted as if they could already see the sect ruling Qingzhou in glory. Down at the foot of the mountain, in a small blacksmith yard, heat from the furnace baked the air until it was hard to breathe. Charlie stood bare-chested. He swung the heavy hammer in a steady rhythm. Every strike landed clean and precise. The beat carried a cold, killing intent that never leaked into his face. Outside the yard, passers talked with envy about Li Xuanji. Going into seclusion, they talked about him swallowing the sacred fruit and stepping into the sky. Charlie stopped his hammer. He grabbed a rag and wiped the sweat from his brow. Firelight danced across his skin like a dull red mask. He smiled with the calm of a man watching the end of a story he had written himself. For Li Xuanji, that fruit was not a chance at heaven. It was a one-way ticket to hell. Greed had blinded Li Xuanji. It made him lift the sugar-coated poison to his own mouth. It made him swallow the death he deserved with joy. The net of revenge that Charlie had woven so carefully finally tightened, and the first noose drew closed in silence. Li Xuanji sat cross-legged on the high platform. Under the gaze of countless eyes, he swallowed the fake dragon saliva fruit. In one bite, the moment the medicinal power spread, the vast life force he expected for a nascent soul breakthrough did not arrive. Instead, a savage poison surged like a flood and tore through his meridians. The fruit had been injected with high concentration, 7-step heartbreak grass juice by Charlie. Now it crashed violently against the impure spiritual power Li Xuanji had stolen through evil arts. The collision triggered an irreversible chain reaction. In only a few breaths, the healthy color drained from Li Xuanji's face and turned purple-black. His features twisted in horror. Under his skin, countless bulges writhed as if venomous snakes were crawling inside him. He tried to circulate power to force the poison out, but his dantian felt like it had been set on fire. The more he pushed, the more violently the poison erupted. His inner power ran wild. His breath broke. His eyes filled with despair. A scream ripped from his throat. He doubled over, as if a blade had cut his body open from the inside. Then, the aura he had been forcing upward shattered his golden core, cracked his dantian collapsed. With a thunder-like roar, the blast threw him from the platform. It also ripped away the mask he had hidden behind for years. As the dantian broke, a thick stench of rotting corpses spread across the entire crowd. It was proof of the devouring demonic art he practiced. It was proof of refining living people's essence blood. The truth exploded into the open. The whole place fell into chaos. The sects that came to congratulate him changed faces on the spot. Enemies who had long coveted Clearwind Sect resources seized the moment to attack the sect warding array. Failed after the internal explosion. Clearwind Sect lost all protection in an instant. Killing cries and wails braided together into an apocalyptic storm. In the confusion, Li Qingyao fled in panic under the cover of a few loyal followers. In the end, she vanished into endless flames and night. No one knew if she lived or died. 5 years later, the first snow in Fallen Leaf Town covered the Bluestone Road. At the end of the street, the humble blacksmith shop still burned day and night. A few traveling merchants sheltered from the snow inside and talked loudly. They spoke of the collapse of Clearwind Sect. They spoke of sect master Li Xuanji dying from backlash. They spoke of Li Qingyao disappearing without a trace. They spoke of the era changing and the strong rising and falling. Like waves, Charlie listened without a word. He stood by the furnace as the heat washed over him. He did not look like the young genius who once lit up a sect hall. He looked like an ordinary blacksmith. With calm eyes, he took a piece of iron from the fire. He laid it on the anvil. He raised the hammer high. Then he brought it down. The clear sound of metal rang out and filled the shop. Sparks flew and scattered like tiny stars. Warmth spread and drove away the winter cold. In that crisp clash of iron and steel, all the grudges and love and betrayal of the past finally became smoke above the furnace. They thinned, they drifted, they vanished without a trace.